another episode of Always Making. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode. We have another great guest in the studio with us. Dwan from SLC Soap is joining us. Soap or soaps?
Soap.
Soap. Okay, I got that right the first time. Is joining us here. And we're going to have a conversation about everything soap and what drives your passion, about why you do it and everything. Before we get into that conversation, guys, do what you're supposed to do. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Do all that fun YouTube stuff. If you guys haven't seen what we've already been doing with some of the other videos, there's some tutorial videos. We haven't come up with a soap one yet, but maybe soap tutorial. That could be something we got to align in the future. But check out our other tutorial videos. They've been going great for us. We've got some great ones lined up. And we'll see what happens there. Okay, guys. That's it. Let's get into the conversation.
Okay.
How did this all start for you?
Well,
introduce yourself. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm Dwan. I don't know really what else to say. I've always been a very creative person. I've got a BFA from the University of Utah. My emphasis was in photography, but I also did printmaking, photography, ceramics. Oh gosh.
So the creativity
Weaving.
goes way back then, and
Yeah.
it's not just a soap last minute. Okay.
Yeah.
So soap.
So
Let's get into why soap?
I got bored during the pandemic and we started watching soap videos and I'm like, I could make that. So then I ordered all the supplies off Amazon and then I started making soap, and then I really got into making soap with like cats and Star Wars and skulls and
All kinds of very fun, creative options for your soap.
Yeah, I have to say that's one of the first things we noticed in your booth was your Star Wars soaps. I think it was the Death Star. You had like a Death Star shaped soap, and we were like, "Is that soap? Is that the Death Star?" Like, because we had the booth next door, and so Derek and I were like kind of like whispering to each other, "Is that the Death Star? I think that is. That's so cool." But yeah, definitely your shaped soaps are very unique and very cool.
Yeah, it definitely. We first met you up at the the Big Cottonwood Canyon Flea up in Brighton resort, and we got rained out that day. That was there's thunderstorms that came in. That was the first show for us for the season up there. But how long have you been doing shows now with your soaps?
let's see. 3 years. 3 years I've been doing markets.
About how many markets do you think that's total for those 3 years?
Oh man.
Let's ask it this way. About how many markets are you doing a month?
Well, I've taken a break this winter just to my daughter moved out, and so I've got a spare room, and I'm like, okay, that's my soap room. So I've been working on that and building up inventory because I got accepted into Wheeler Farm, which is every single Sunday. So I'm going to need a lot of
soap
for that.
Yeah.
So we've had another soap maker on, completely different style of soap, but from what I understand, it's a process that you just don't make the mold and it's ready to go. How long does it take for your soaps to kind of cure and go through its process with you?
Normal soaps are like 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Unless you do like a hot process, then it's almost like a couple days. Or like if you make a glycerin soap, it's basically instantaneous. You can use it right away.
Okay, so I'm not soap knowledgeable. A hot process soap? What is this?
So you use it like a crock pot and you cook it as you're making it, and so it's already gone through all the things it needs to as you're cooking it.
Okay.
And then it's like a real rustic looking soap with I don't know.
Like kind of that, like, I guess I not as like department store looking soap.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I've looked at some of your stuff on social media as well, and going through like the large catalog of different stuff. Where does the inspiration start? From what I could tell, it looked like you were making a few like creative things for friends and family members first, but then it kind of skyrocketed.
Yeah,
from
and
there.
I'm like, oh, they're like, you should sell this, and I'm like, okay, I'll try.
But like, why Star Wars? Why the Volkswagen bugs? Why the dogs? Why, like,
Skulls.
the cats, the skulls?
I'm a little bit of a sci-fi geek.
Okay.
Like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. That's like my universe right there.
That's your jam.
Yeah.
And so your inspiration right into the soap and
Yeah.
kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and usually I think of like if I have a fragrance oil and I think about like, well, what does that scent bring to mind? Like what colors and what shapes would be in the soap, or does this bring like, does this warrant a cat soap? And like I need some cats, and like what is the cat doing in the soap? Oh.
So the soap kind of to you dictates what it wants to become.
Yeah.
With the style of stuff you're making, there is blocks, your standard like soap bar, and what it shows on your social media is like large molds, and then you're slicing those down into the bars. But then you have 3-dimensional pieces like the skulls that we're talking about, the Volkswagen. It's an actual Volkswagen bug. How do you go about making some of those?
Well, luckily I just browse the internet and I find companies that make these really cool molds.
And are they silicone?
Yeah, they're
I'm
silicone.
assuming?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're silicone molds. I could also make candles with those if I ever got into that realm of things, but right now I'm just sticking with soaps.
How different, I mean, if you have kind of researched into candles, how different is it from soap making to candle making? Is it kind of similar or
No,
okay?
it's completely different.
Completely different.
Like there's so many different types of waxes and wicks, and you got to match the size of the wick to the size of your candle, and fragrances and
all that.
Completely
it's
different science.
different. So, because right, like I'm thinking there's the lye in soap. Is that right?
yeah,
That's the stuff that's like
it makes it soap.
okay.
The chemical reaction with the oils.
And that's the dangerous part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It
I
gets
was
really
like,
hot.
okay. Okay. I've got so many questions because it just like you're like throwing so much at us really quick on all of this. Let's go back to the start with all of this here.
Uh-huh.
Your first bar soap. Where
How did it turn out?
Yeah. How did it turn out?
It turned out really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What was the scents in it?
It was like a peppermint lavender blend.
Okay. Why those choices?
I think that's what I had on hand.
Okay. So it's just part of the initial kit you got, or
Well, like I use, this is weird, but when I do my laundry, I use those wool balls,
Oh,
and they
we
put
have the same.
essential oils in them, and I make sure dryers smell really nice.
Christy
So-
gets really mad when I
do
don't
the
put the
same.
essential oils on it.
yeah, so I had those essential oils from doing that, and so I just use those.
Those oils, the scents, that's what you had. How much of an investment did you need to get started with your first set of soap making equipment?
That was pretty cheap. I just had one little mold, and all the supplies were relatively inexpensive at that time.
Okay. And then the lye, is that something that right off the bat that's something you need for soap, or is there alternatives to that?
Not
Not
I
that.
don't think so.
Okay.
I think it just lye.
So what kind of safety concerns right off the bat were you with using a chemical like that to make your stuff?
Well, you need to make sure that you wipe everything down before and after, so you don't have those little lye pellets going
Anywhere.
free floating in
Okay.
the universe. And I've got cats, so I don't want the cats ingesting or stepping on any of that. So I make sure I keep everything clean, because it gets really hot. And then as I make the lye with water, and then you have to let it cool down. But I have these little heat trivets things, and I set my lye mixture on that to cool down. And the fumes are pretty bad too.
Yeah.
So I have fans going.
Fans, respirators, or just kind of
No, I don't
make
need
sure
a
airflow?
Yeah, it's not as bad as using a respirator, but
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
I have a fan going.
And then said the first bar came out pretty good.
Yeah.
So was it hey, success, I want to do more? Is
Yeah.
that kind of what drove?
Yeah.
First clients were friends, family giving it out, or were you right away hitting markets at that point?
No, it took me a while, I think, just because of COVID. Nothing was really opening, and then I did my first real big show was Craft Lake City.
Okay. That
No.
was our first big show.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I also took their business class.
Okay. What did their business class entail?
Just kind of really trying to get you out of your shell and like doing like a business statement and like who your target audience is and like really pushing to have an online shop, which I never did because I still don't know if I have the time for that because I still have a full-time job along with my soap making.
Weekend warrior soap making. When you are coming up with a new batch, to like, how pre-planned are you for your batches to get to a show?
Most of my like there's like 4 or 5 that I like make all the time, which is my Star Wars. And then like like a rainbow sherbet, that one sells really well, and my watermelon soaps. But like when I'm trying something new, I order when I order fragrance oils, you can order little 1 ounce sample sizes, and sometimes they have really good sales and it's like $1 each, and so I load up, and so I smell them and see if I like them, and then like I think about like, well, what image does that bring to mind, or is this a cat soap or something else? And
When you say cat soap, I know it because I've seen them. I go, but for everyone out there, your soap bars have a little cat inside of the bar, and a lot of times some of them are like little like laying down poses, or some of them
it's like the silhouette of a cat.
Yeah.
That you see when you cut the cross section of the bar.
And it's like Starry Night style one where like it's kind of patting at some stars. I've seen that one from you.
Yeah.
How do you go about making stuff like that?
Well, I have a lot of supplies. My main cat mold, a gal in England makes them. She's a very talented soap maker. She makes amazing soaps. Her name is, her YouTube channel is I Dream in Soap.
Okay.
She makes amazing stuff, and she also sells a lot of products. And she sells these extruder discs in all different shapes, like trees and butterflies and clouds, moons, whatever. And it's like a giant, it looks like a caulk gun.
Okay.
And you make soap dough, which is soap that hasn't like fully cured yet. It's still really soft, and you got to make sure it doesn't get into the air, because then you can like knead it and use it like Play-Doh.
Okay.
And then you put it in the extruder gun, and it makes all these shapes, and then you put that in the loaf of soap. So when you slice
So
it
I'm
all
imagining like a cookie dough type.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. I'm like, how do you do this? This is so cool.
Yeah, because I've seen you do horses for, I think it was a coworker or a friend.
Yeah.
Is one of the ones you did. Volkswagen in the bar as well, not just the 3D mold.
Yeah.
Then the cats, the Death Star soap. How do you do the Death Star? Is that an extruder as well, or is that a little bit
so
special?
that is like a piece of PVC pipe.
Oh, really? So
And
is that
then-
something you came up with, and do you, for the lines of the Death Star, how are you creating
It's a
that?
stamp.
Oh,
So I had a stamp made. I found a soap stamp maker on Etsy.
That's
very
genius.
clever. Very, because
I love
I saw you did a brewery soap for somebody, and they had stamps on the bottom of that, but I would have never thought to do the Death Star. So, okay, so now I'm kind of getting it here. You're using just a circular PVC pipe. Is it the dough also for that?
No, it's just regular soap.
Regular soap. So you make your round soap, then you place that inside your soap mold.
The like bar mold.
And then you slice each individual one, and then you're stamping each into. Genius.
I love it.
Yeah, that's very.
So do you
cool.
just heat the stamp up, and that's like how
No,
it makes the impression
the
on the soap, or
soap,
is
when
it
you first
still-
cut the soap, it's soft enough to
Okay.
take the impression. Like you have like a couple days before it gets too hard and it won't
Okay.
accept it. But
So once you slice, stamp, let it cure the rest of the way, and then what do you? Is something like that? Is that sitting after it's been cut for like 4 weeks cured?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like the whole block is being cured and then you're slicing.
No, you slice it up and then you cure it, because then all the excess water needs to evaporate, so it's not soft and squishy.
So what is the smell you did for the Death Star?
It's called Beneath the Stars.
Okay. When coming up with kind of those clever fandom nerd pieces, does it start with the scent first and then the creative, or does the like fandom go, okay, I need to find the right combination?
Yeah. Like I would love to do a Lord of the Rings soap. But like I haven't really figured out what that would look like yet or smell like.
Okay. So not like some smelly golem or anything like.
No, but I mean like
I don't think everyone wants Smeagol smoke.
fire some Mount Doom and it could smell like fire and
Kind of like an ash maybe
Yeah.
or something. Okay, so still experimenting with some Lord of the Rings. Is that your two main fandoms, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings?
Well, I mean I love Harry Potter too.
Okay. Like I'm Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, definitely me. Christy's a Harry Potter
Yep.
fan for
Yep.
sure. I don't know. I just
And Lord of the
couldn't
Rings,
really
Star
get
Wars.
into it. I totally, on one of the last episodes, I totally had all the Star Trek fans probably pissed off at me for throwing them under the bus because Star Wars is the more superior. Again, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from you guys on this one. But
But it's just obvious. Star Wars is better.
I do like Star Trek too.
It's okay.
It's fine. it's sci-fi. I can't complain. It's sci-fi. It's
Yeah.
great. What are some other future ideas or other fandoms that you kind of want to play around with? I know you're still trying to figure out Lord of the Rings, but is there other things that are like on the top of your list that you want to get yourself into?
I can't really think of anything right now. Just
Any Doctor Who coming down the line by any chance?
that would be pretty fun.
Right? TARDIS is like already almost a bar shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I want to talk about, so people out there who are listening and maybe looking for advice into getting started with shows and markets and stuff like that, how long were you making soap, preparing before you took that next leap and said, hey, I'm going to go do a art market, a farmer's market, a show of that?
Let's see. I did Craft Lake City, and then what was my market after that?
Well, how long were you building up before you got to Craft Lake City? Let's start there.
Probably like 4 months.
4 months. And then what was that initial push to like, hey, I'm going to try a show? Because for a lot of people, a lot of makers, we'll make stuff in our basement for days and never go, oh yeah, I'm going to go to a market and sell this stuff. And you just pile up stuff. What was that motivation to say, okay, I'm going to try this out at a market?
I just wanted to like make more soap.
Honest answer. Like, so was it, oh, hey, the husband is like, I've got too much soap like stored up. I need to clear this soap before I can make more soap. Is that how that kind of
Yeah,
works?
that's kind of like, okay, so in order to fuel my obsession of making, I need to sell it to make more. Yeah.
Fair enough. I definitely, as makers, we can like attest to having, oh, well, let's try this out, and oh, there's a pile of this stuff over here and a pile over here. It happens, I think, to a lot of makers. When it came to your first show, what was there any kind of like nerves or anxiety or anything that kind of played into that first show, and how'd it go for you?
I think it really went really well, but at the same time, I'm like huge introvert. I'm like in my shell and I'm hiding and I don't want to talk to anybody. But at the same time, it's really interesting to meet people
Yeah.
and like, oh, were you like my soap? Well, I made it with this and this fragrance, and I've got this one over here that you might like.
It is very interesting how a lot of our guests and a lot of the people we meet at shows are introvert and are makers that do not necessarily feel comfortable in public. But I was with one of our previous guests, I was saying, like, you guys are doing it. That's the reality. Like, Christy has more of a hard time in public than I have with people, and I like to talk, so that's why we're doing a podcast. But it is one of those, I anybody who's out there trying to give it a good honest go with all of that like anxiety and buildup and worry of everything, you guys are doing it, and we're 3 years in now for you doing shows. So what was it that decided to keep making? Was it just the drive to make more soap, and you're like, okay, I have to go out and be out in public and sell my soap so I can make more soap? Or is there something more to it for you?
I don't know. It's like it's a little bit of like I just want to keep making, and at the same point, I get a huge kick out of people's reaction with the skulls.
Yeah.
Like people just love the skull soaps.
So was a skull soap something you had your first show, or is that something that came later?
That came later. I think I was just looking at the internet looking for different soap ideas, and I found these really cool molds.
And then
I'm like, oh God, I gotta make those.
I'm gonna try those. How many different skulls are there
There are.
that you make? I mean, hundreds and thousands of skulls out there. But...
Yeah, but the patterns I have, there's probably 6 different skulls.
And so variety when making the soap colors and everything. How do you go about choosing some of the colorways that you go with making what you do?
So for the skulls, I just pick the fragrance and then whatever I feel like that fragrance would look like.
Okay. So mossy green, like moss smell or nature smell. You're
Yeah.
thinking green skulls or something along that nature.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, simple. Doesn't have to be complicated, right?
Yeah.
For the shows, how did you go about figuring out how you wanted to display, set up your booth? Like for us, it's a constant change. We're constantly adapting, and for different shows, it kind of changes for us a little bit. But when you were kind of figuring out your setup, how did you land on what you're using now? Or is it constantly changing as well?
Well, it's changed just a little bit. Like before we had these, it was called Ivar from IKEA, and you'd put them all together, and then we take them all apart and put them together for each show. And it was like such a pain because you're like, you have to hit it with your hand and your wrists start hurting. And then like, but it looked really cool because it was just the right size for our booth. And then we'd have 2 tables. But then we went to a show. I did some farmers markets in Daybreak. And there was a gentleman there that had these foldable shelves.
Okay.
The metal ones. And that was like a game changer.
And they kind of just allowed everything to pack up much easier, and then not having to tear down. We have kind of gone down similar rabbit holes of trying to, we've got actually some folding shelves for our t-shirts to sit on, but also some racks and things that make it a little bit easier to not have to build every time we attend a show. There are some shows we get into where it's like, oh, you have an hour of setup time. I'm like, I take an hour just to get the canopy up. So I can see making it easier on you. Is it just you setting up everything, or do you have help?
I have help.
You have help? Is that the husband that we have in the back of the cameras over there? When doing your shows and getting yourself set up, what are some tips or like hints or like experience that you have that maybe for anyone watching looking to get into it, like you've learned from doing your past shows?
Invest in a really good tent.
Yeah, that's a pretty good thing. Yeah,
that's really important. And then I've seen some people with some really awesome weights, and I would love to make them. They're like PVC pipe with cement inside, and they just strap it to their tent, and it's awesome. Weights are good. And then like when I pack everything up and get ready for the thing, I use what I pack stuff in for displays. So I have these wooden boxes that I pack all my soap in, and then as I'm unpacking it, I use those as displays on my tables. So it's like a double
use. Yeah.
Double use.
So does the soap require like special storage when you're transporting it back and forth to shows, or once it's cured, is it kind of okay?
It's pretty hard soap once it's cured. But the boxes keep it safe. Like if it rattles around in the cart over, it won't hurt anything.
Okay. Interesting.
For your, let's get into it this way, like display setup, canopy setup, all your stuff. What is the thing that draws in, like, how are you drawing those people into your booth? I know the skulls usually are sitting at the front.
Yeah.
But is that your focus? Like,
yeah. I put those like just right on the tables, right at the front of the the tent, because that usually catches people's eye, and then when they look at what else I have to offer, they usually see the cats. Oh, and then they go in the back, towards the back of the tent, and look at all my cats.
The variety of all the other ones.
And all the normal bars of soap.
How many different cat soaps do you have now?
Oh man, there's a lot. I want to say maybe like 15 to 20.
Oh, that is a lot.
That is a lot. I was not expecting the number to be that. I was thinking the skulls around 6, maybe 8 kind of thing. 15 to 20 cat soaps.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite soap to make?
Yeah.
The cat soap?
I love cats.
When, like, I guess it's an easy answer here, but because you own cats, is that the drive that like was to start?
Yeah,
making cat
and
soap?
like I think people who like cats also like cat soaps, and like they're drawn to the kitties, and like they always people give them as gifts and to other cat lovers.
I will say your soap does make for a very unique gift for people very easily, because it's very easy to get a fandom. It's very easy to get, like you said, a cat product for a cat lover and go, hey, here, look at that. It's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find that in any big department store or any of that kind of stuff. What are some of the reactions? Now, I know you like hearing from people and what they like react, but what are some of those like most crazy reactions you've got from people just coming through your booth?
I don't know if I have anything super crazy.
Yeah. What's one that stands out to you then?
Just like everybody looking at the skulls is always a great treat. They either love it, or there's like people like, oh my gosh, why do you have skulls?
We are in a very interesting state when it comes to certain things of that nature.
Yeah.
I know certain reactions can occur. We get it sometimes with some of our artwork as well. And it's okay. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of other soap out there in the market for them to go buy their soap. But with the markets, and like you took a break this winter trying to figure out your next kind of studio space set up in your daughter's room, what are some of the bigger plans for making more soap? Is there more molds you want? Is there more machines? What's some of that look like?
There's a few things that I want to improve on, but it's mainly like label making, and I'm okay with like all the molds that I have. I don't really like doing huge batches of soap. I like the small batches, and I've kind of got it down with like my recipe and like how much will fit in the mold, and if I put a cat in, how much do I have to take out? And
when you say small batches, like how many bars are we talking at a time, or how many skull molds at a time are we talking?
I usually like my batches of soap. I usually get about 18 bars or 12 skulls.
Okay, and that's would it be right to call it a vat of like soap? Is that
It's like these little like loaves
for the mold?
They're like
But when you're making the soap, you're cooking, like you said crock pot earlier, is that how you're making it in a crock pot?
No, I don't. I only do that every once in a while when I make some liquid soap.
Okay.
But normal soap is just like I have these it's a specific plastic. It's like number 5.
Yep.
Recycle number 5. Whatever that's called.
That's to cook the soap, or
no, I just make the soap in there with immersion blender and all my oils and whatever scent and the micas that I use.
Okay, so let's get into the tool conversation here. So immersion blender, that's something we love, and I broke the one we had upstairs, and now I've like JB welded it so it's permanently. So now we have one down here for like blending stuff whenever we need it. But are there other like specialty tools that you have that are necessity for making soap, or is it all stuff that you can get like household goods and make soap with?
Well, you got to make sure you have a scale. That's like one of the most important things.
Okay.
Because you measure everything out in, I do ounces, but a lot of people do grams or whatever else. Hey there.
Yeah, Juniper, wake up. We'll see if she stays with us and does not come too much of an interruption here. But scale, super important. That totally makes sense.
Super important. Immersion blenders a necessity. I have a lot of spatulas for scraping out the soap batter into the molds.
It's not that it's simple, but it is in a sense like pretty easy with what you need. Yeah, we like Christy bought wax to potentially try candles, but we never really jumped into candles. I was like, that's another thing. Like we'd like more stuff to make and stuff. And then but like soap, I've never like, I was like, that seems not out of my wheelhouse. It just seems like another thing that like takes so much. But I'm like, kind of like, as you're saying, I'm like, I think I have everything besides material. Like I could make soap and try it. Like we have a few silicone molds. They're very small molds. It's my hopes and dreams and everything like high in the sky is that like people out there listening and watching and stuff like gets inspired to like try it, because everybody who we've had on so far all started during COVID. Was it because you had more time, or was it because you just like, I needed a new hobby?
I needed a creative outlet.
Okay. And then from that, you're now 3 years into making, well, no, you're 4 years into making soap, 3 years into selling soap.
Yeah.
And is there a thought process of stopping?
Unless oils get completely ridiculous. I mean, I'll keep making
soap.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe retirement, like little small boutique, like on the ocean side selling like handmade soap.
That would be awesome.
We were talking about tools. Sorry, guys. Juniper did jump in to the conversation there a little bit. Christy will step back in when she gets Juniper settled back down. I mean, guys, we're doing a podcast with a newborn. Like, it's going to happen.
It's okay.
All our guests have been super awesome when it comes to Juniper interrupting, but thank you so much for being patient. But as far as tools, we were talking about the stuff needed. And as we were waiting for Juniper to settle back down off audio wise, it sounds like something everybody could kind of try. Like a scale, an immersion blender. We were talking off camera about using wood blocks and wax paper to potentially make a mold. You don't need to go buy a fancy silicone mold. You could potentially even get away with like a loaf pan with like wax paper.
Or like milk carton.
And so
Pringles can.
DIY, like a Pringles can. Like there's a lot of ways to do it on a very inexpensive experimental stage before you really want to make a full leap into it. We did talk about investment wise. You said it didn't take much to get into it. Material wise, I mean, when you make a batch of soap and stuff, like, are we talking you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars getting your supplies, or we're talking a couple extra dollars on your paycheck to get some supplies to make some soap?
I try and buy like maybe 100 to 150 at a time.
Okay, but that's like, doing a lot of soap though, right?
Yeah, that does make a lot
of
soap.
When we're talking that kind of budget on spending on material, we're talking multiple shows you're going to have supplies for soap to sell.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, guys, that's not something you have to jump into the full gambit of it, but you guys can, like, there's a lot of soap options at local art stores and craft stores that can get you started on a much smaller scale without all this crazy amount of extra stuff needed. Is there a tool that you've purchased or that you have that has made your soap making a lot easier, or was it like a game changer, or has it been like, oh, all these things work and it's just kind of functioning for you?
The extruder gun is really nice.
Yeah.
That's kind of like
it's a specialty tool for sure. Yeah.
I can do so many shapes with that.
And I'm thinking of it when you said it, the extruder tool, there's cookie presses that
it's kind of like that.
Okay. So is it just like a little front like piece that changes the shape for you?
Uh-huh.
And so you can just get those little extra bits and you buy one extruder gun and then all those little bits when you want to change something out. So that's the most specialty piece you have. And that really, like, if you guys go and check out her social media with it, it's give them your social media, and we'll also hit it at the end, but your social media handle.
It's just SLC Soap.
Perfect. And so if you guys go check out some of that stuff we're talking about there, you can see all these cool patterns and designs. How long into making soap before you got that piece and started making that kind of stuff?
That's kind of a recent thing.
Okay.
Like I want to say last year.
So let me ask, is some of your earlier like soap making that had some of those shapes, what were you doing for that?
Those were they have, it's called a column mold,
Okay.
and they come in shapes.
And so you were just making individual shapes
Yeah.
and then laying those into your molds.
Yeah, at the first one I think I ever did was I made a batch of soap, and I used a cookie cutter, and then I stuck all those shapes together for the long piece to put the bar soap.
That's
I mean, it
honestly,
works.
I mean, that's genius in the sense. Again, this goes back to you don't need specialty tools if you are creative enough on how your process works. And so, cookie cutter, multiple shapes cut out, stacked them together,
Yep.
laid all. Yeah, that's pretty genius as well. So, time much easier now with an extruder gun.
Yeah.
It did take some time to get to that point where it's a little bit easier and makes sense on making an investment as well. Like as makers, we all want to make sure like we could go buy all the fancy cool tools and everything, but if we're not, if it's not giving us the return in like the business we're trying to pursue, it's kind of pointless to make that investment. When it comes to the different techniques and stuff, is that stuff from your previous creativity or creative outlets that you had before? Is that stuff that kind of helped with that? Because you did say sculpting and ceramics, or is that stuff that you've learned through like YouTube videos and online courses and stuff like that?
Mostly soap. Anything that I do with soap, I've watched YouTube videos.
Okay. Have you felt like any of your previous creative outlets have kind of helped with some of the soap making?
Yeah, because I look at like that little bar of soap as a canvas, and like, what can I do with that canvas?
Photography wise, are you thinking like composition, rule of thirds, and stuff
Yes,
like that when it
stuff
comes
like
to
that.
your soap stuff?
But the soap doesn't always cooperate.
Fair.
Yeah.
It does want to do its own thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Sculpting wise, I mean, I can imagine. I think that I'm thinking of a cartoon where they're whittling soap into shapes, or maybe it's a movie or something. But I can think. Have you thought about like hand carving soaps, or is that like not even a feasible thing?
I don't know if I'd want to waste my time.
Fair enough.
It's just because, like, okay, you've got this awesome little sculpted piece of soap, and the first time you use it, all the details are going to get washed away.
I never thought of that because yeah, you are right. Like when you think about like your soap and the art pieces like that you're making with it, they do just wash away. And it is very interesting in like a weird artistic like bigger piece like you're making art that like
It goes down the drain.
goes down the drain. So is there any soap that you've made that like with that premise that like, oh man, I've spent all this time and it's just kind of wash away? Is that
Well, a lot of people tell me they just buy the skulls and stick them in their bathroom for like
Okay.
a scent, a piece of art that makes scent in their bathroom or something, and they don't want to use it.
I can just see that first guest coming over that didn't know, like, oh, look at the soap and just wipe and walk. And then you have a repeat customer.
They'll last a while, but if I like carve something, I'm sure every little detail
It's
is
going to get
washed
kind of washed
yeah.
away. When making your molds or making your soap with the molds, what's that process? Is it just similar in the sense of like, I'm trying to just think of like kind of work through your process a little bit, but like your blocks, and we talked about like the cookie cutters and how it kind of stacks and stuff.
Mhm.
Same concept with your extruder, and then you're laying in your different colors of your soap into it to make your block, and then you're cutting your bars out of it. With your molds, are you like having to like extrude those? Do you like, or how do you go about making all your mold stuff? Is it more time consuming than your bar work?
It's probably about the same.
About the same.
Yeah, because like as I'm pouring the soap batter into my little molds, the skull molds or whatever mold I'm using, depending on how the fragrance oil acts with the soap as to how fast I have to work.
So you brought up something, it just made me think, how often do you have a bad batch of soap?
When I'm trying out new fragrances, I usually like I make my usual batch size, and then I divide it up into 3 or 4, and I test out new fragrances and see how they work. And one of the ones I just tried out smells so amazing.
What's the smell?
It's called my mind just went blank.
Wouldn't put on the spot. That's usually what we all do.
Yeah.
Forget. Are we talking more floral scents or more?
It's a spice. Oh, cardamom, black cardamom,
okay.
and cream.
Oh, I imagine that does smell really
And it
good.
smells so good. But when I first put it in the soap, it turned bright yellow.
Oh.
And now it's like almost black.
Wait, as it cured, it changed colors?
Yeah, it changed. A lot of well, not a lot, but some fragrances do that.
So did the whole bar change black, or was it like just parts of it are black?
Wherever I use that fragrance oil, like I did half the batch of that with like uncolored or just white soap mixed in with, I think I did green, but all the green went black.
Oh, wow. That's interesting chemical reaction that's happening with that. So on a case, like you're doing small batches that happens and kind of figuring out what works, what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you recycle some of that material and like try again?
Well, the fragrance wouldn't go away, but like you can shred it up and put it in a crock pot with some water.
Okay.
And that might help the fragrance get out of it a little bit, but at the same time you could maybe add different soaps in there and shred them in there and
come up with a unique smell.
Yeah.
And kind of like there's a movie reference I'm trying to figure out. I can't, but it's where it's all the things in one. But anyways, I'm lost on that reference I was trying to make with that. But as far as it goes with your testing products, what is your process like when you want to come up with a new thing? You've got these oils that you've got from your supplier. When trying out, how long do you take before you take that prototype to then market from there?
Well, if it turns out really good, then I wouldn't have to do any more testing.
Okay.
And then I would just wait for that batch to cure, and then I could take it to the market.
Okay. And then I'm picturing my grandmother's recipe book with all the different recipes that she's learned over time. Mm-hmm. Do you have a catalog of all your different recipes, or is it like from just experience of like, okay, this, and this makes that, or do you have like your catalog in depth of all the different things you've tried?
Well, I've got a soap recipe that I purchased.
Okay.
Because you can do that.
Okay, yeah.
And I did because I didn't want to like...
There's nothing wrong with that.
And there's a whole bunch of free recipes on YouTube. A lot of different makers just put their recipes out there. This one I just happened to purchase because I wasn't that knowledgeable back then.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, so... and then I've tweaked that recipe to something of my own.
Again, this is going back into the maker side of me and trying to understand this whole process. You have your recipe for soap, and then you take that soap, and then there's the fragrance you can add to it to change it, and then there's the dye.
The micas, yeah.
The mica, like mica powders, mm-hmm. Okay, to change the color. So all your for layman's term, for me, I'm thinking you've got one batch of soap, and then you get the creative outlet from that point. Like mm-hmm. You've got your blank canvas with that soap.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, okay, I'm getting a better picture in my head of how it all goes down. You make it a big batch of this. How many different recipes are, I guess not recipes, but how many different versions of a soap are you making from that batch? Or like colors, are you breaking that down and making a couple different bars? Or are you just usually one recipe is making one bar?
One recipe will make 2 loaves of soap. I usually make 2 loaves at a time.
Okay. And same color, or are you mixing it up?
I usually do two of the same of whatever I'm doing.
And then 4 to 6 weeks of it curing once it's done. And then from past guests we had on soap, you can demold within 24 hours, 48 hours, and then make. Mm-hmm. So how often are you making soap through the week? I know this is a side thing for you, but
yeah, it's usually like Fridays. I get a couple, and sometimes during the week I'll do it. So maybe like 3 batches a week.
3 batches a week. And so for people who are looking at getting into the market side of things, when do you feel you have enough soap to do a market? Like, how many bars are you taking to a show?
Oh man. I probably bring like, let's see, there's probably 30 different scents as far as bar soaps, and that's mixed in with cats and just regular bars. And then for skulls, there's probably like 10 different scents for skulls, and then I've got like 4 or 5 of each skull for
market season that's approaching us now. How much effort are you putting in these past couple weeks to get ready for market season, or is it do you feel like you ramp up before market season kind of gets started, and then by the end of the season are you just kind of dwindling down your stock, or are you still producing throughout the whole season?
I make skulls all the time because those sell
pretty good for you.
Sell
They're
really
very
well.
popular from what we see from when we were at the shows with you.
Yeah. And then just sporadically, depending on what sells really well, like last year the rainbow sherbet scent really sold well, and so I've had I just made a batch last weekend for that, and I'll probably make another one.
And soap doesn't really go bad, right? Like
No.
it kind of has a infinite shelf life. I mean, eventually something deteriorates.
But the scent usually goes depending on.
Yeah. But so inventory wise throughout the season, like if you've got stuff that's left over from last season, it's still good for the next season of show. Is there any plans like ramping up this market season from your previous market seasons, or are you kind of just going to keep steady pace with what you've been doing in the past couple of years?
I'm started making a lot just because I know that every single Sunday I'm going to be at Wheeler Farm, and I need to have some good inventory for that. So
yeah, it's a very popular outdoor market for sure. Mm-hmm. Is there, I guess we talked a little bit about your future plans a little earlier. We talked about your process. We talked about markets. I want to make sure we get the right information for people out there to, if they want to get into something that you're doing, because you seem like you love what you're doing when it comes to soap. The reason you keep making soap is and selling soap is because you want to make more soap. Yeah. What is some helpful tips or advice that you have for anybody looking to get into potentially a soap making business like yourself?
I would say figure out your style, because there's a lot of different styles. There's quite a few people that do like a rustic soap, an all natural soap, different shapes like I do. Just figure out what you want to make. Don't buy all the fragrance oils, even though you want to. Just kind of pick a few, or buy the little 1 ounce size to try them all out.
For these 1 ounce sizes, how far do those go or last you for using with soap?
Usually when I make soap, depending on, there's usage rates. There's something called an IFRA.
Okay. Foreign language to me, but yeah. I trust you.
International Fragrance Rate Usage, or
okay.
I can't remember.
Something along that lines. Yeah. So it's like a regulated amount so to get the smells.
Yeah, but
across the board
usually it's 4 to 5 ounces of fragrance for a batch of soap.
Okay. So the little 1 ounce bottles, you're talking you need 4 to 5 of those bottles to make a batch. Now that's your full size scale batch that you're doing. If you're doing smaller scale, you could probably get away with the 1 ounce potentially, depending on ratios and stuff.
Yeah.
Great tip though on find your style. I think that is something that a lot of people get nervous about or worried about when it comes to what they're doing out there. The audience will come. Find what you're happy with, and it seems like your cats are your most popular thing you love making, but your skulls are very popular, and you do seem to get a different variety of audience than a lot of the soap makers, because you can go to a show and there could be 5 or 6 different soap makers there.
Yeah.
And it's okay because you have your own unique style to your soap. But for you guys out there that are listening or watching, I think that's a very good tip in the sense of find your voice, find your style, and and the people will come. I was talking to someone earlier today. It's the Field of Dreams concept. It's if you build it, they will come. That's the reality. And I wholeheartedly do believe that, because like what we do for our stuff is it makes me happy. It doesn't, I'm not trying to make other people happy, but there are people who enjoy what we do. Your soap makes you happy. Like that is your happy. And there are people out there who are finding your soap and really enjoying what you're doing. I want to make sure people who are out there who have listened to the show and want to find more about you. I know you don't have the online shop. I know that's something you're thinking about and the potential, but if they do want to find more information about what you're doing, follow what you're doing, where can they find more information about you?
Well, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. Or I think you can email me if you want. It's just like saltlakeCitySoap@gmail.com. And you can message me through Instagram or through Facebook.
And that Instagram handle is?
SLC Soap.
So, guys, super easy. SLC Soap. It is super easy. Go check out all of the cool stuff that they're making. Like, there are so many cool things that you are making with your soap. There's a plethora of different styles and different stuff. If there's something, are you doing like online sales through like direct message if someone reaches out to you?
Yeah.
Or okay, so direct message if you see something you like, or if you're in the local area, go check out her shop or her booth or Wheeler Farms. That's definitely a full summer show. Full summer show for you. You can check her out every Sunday at Wheeler Farms, but you'll be doing other shows throughout the season. Follow on social media. Thank you for being part of the show with us here today.
Well, thank you.
Talking about soap. It's very interesting. I mean, I've learned a lot. I know Christy learned a lot. We kind of both had our minds blown a couple different points at some of the things you were expressing. A caulking gun that makes soap shape and soap plate. Like, guys, this is really cool. So,
Soap Play-Doh.
Soap Play-Doh. Guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Always Making. Do what you guys should do. Subscribe, like, comment. Hey, if you guys want to jump into soap making, follow SLC Soap. Ask questions. You can see she's very informative about making soap. Thanks for watching us on this episode, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.